Senate will come to order. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, King, Colcourse, La Mantilla, Menendez, Middleton, Miles, Nichols, Parker, Paxton, Perry, Schwertner, Sparks, Springer, West, Whitmire, Zaffarini.
Members, quorum is present. Please rise for the invocation by Reverend Stephen Schulte of Eastside Baptist Church in Comanche.
Would you join me in prayer? Loving Heavenly Father, we call upon you today to grant us with your presence in this chamber. I ask for your blessings to be upon each one of these elected representatives. Grant them an extra measure of your love, kindness, mercy, and wisdom as they strive to fulfill their oaths and to represent their constituents from all different backgrounds, different races, and different religions. Father, I ask that you guide these men and women into a deeper spirit of cooperation and unity for the benefit and blessing of all Texans. May they have vision and clarity to use the resources that have been entrusted to them. Finally, I thank you, Father, for your steady hand upon this great state and its people. May you continue to look favorably upon Texas, its leaders, and its people as we look to you for guidance and direction in all matters, whether great or small. I humbly offer this prayer to you, Father God, creator of us all. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. You may be seated. Dean of the Senate moves to dispense the reading of yesterday's journal. Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is adopted. Dean of the Senate moves to excuse Senator King on account of family illness. Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is adopted. Following message from the governor. Secretary, read the message.
To the Senate of the 88th Legislature, regular session, I ask the advice, consent, and confirmation of the Senate with respect to the following appointments. To be members of the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority Board of Directors, James P. Patrick Cahoon, Bernie, Robert E. Blaschke, Woodsboro, John B. Cyrier, Lockhart, Emmanuel Valdez, Jr., New Braunfels. To be members of the University of Texas Board of Regents, Robert P. Gaunt, Austin, Janice M. Longoria, Houston, James C. Rad Weaver, San Antonio. Respectfully submitted, Greg Abbott, Governor of Texas, to nominations.
Members, if there are no objections, I'd like to postpone the reading and referral of bills until the end of session today. Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is adopted. Following motion in writing, Secretary, read the motion.
Motion in writing, Mr. President, I move to suspend Senate Rule 11.13 so that committees may meet during the reading and referral of bills. Motion by Hall.
Any objection, members? Hearing none. Motion is adopted. Senator Campbell, you're recognized to introduce the doctor of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Well, it's my honor to actually introduce a doctor that is in Chairman Huffman's district, but happens to be a friend of mine and a friend of Senator Kolkhorst. So he really has three senators that he knows very well. Members, this is Dr. Jorge Duchesela from the city of Weimar in Colorado County. Dr. Duchesela was born in the Republic of Ecuador and received his doctorate of medicine from the University of Wisconsin Medical School. Since '92, he has served as a professor at UTMB Galveston and has helped, I can tell you, help educate countless of doctors that are serving patients throughout Texas and the world. We're so proud of you. Currently, Dr. Duchesela treats patients in the Ewens Duchesela Clinic at Weimar with his sister Olga, and he is very busy and active in our community. In his spare time, which he has little of, he is the founder and president of the Weimar Soccer Club. Is that right? Mr. President and members, please welcome Senator Huffman's constituent, my friend, Senator Kolkhorst's friend, doctor of the day, Dr. Jorge Duchesela. Welcome to your Senate floor. Thank you for being doctor of the day.
Welcome, doctor. Chair lays out the following resolution. The Secretary will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 308 by Birdwell, recognizing March 16, 2023 as Hill County Day at the state capitol.
You're recognized, Senator Birdwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, it's my pleasure to announce that today is Hill County Day at the Capitol. Hill County was created by the Texas legislature in 1853 and was named after Dr. George Washington Hill, who was the Secretary of War for Sam Houston. One of the schools of Hill County is Hill College, which is home to the Texas Heritage Museum and the Texas Medal of Honor Memorial. Some of the special events that take place in Hill County include certainly the County Fair, Autumn Fest, the Cinco de Mayo celebration, Pioneer Days, Hubbard City Trade Days, and other festivities. And within Hill County is the beautiful Lake Whitney State Park, which is a wonderful place for outdoor recreation, and the city of Hillsboro, which is a top 10 place in the world to see the solar eclipse next year. And finally, Hill County includes Abbott, Texas, which is the birthplace of Willie Nelson. The delegation is led by Judge Justin Lewis. Judge, if you would, please stand. And County Commissioner Martin Lake. Commissioner, if you would, please stand and be recognized. Members, would the entire Hill County delegation stand and be recognized? Welcome to this special group from Hill County to their state capital. I move adoption, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Welcome from Hill County. Good to have you all with us. Thank you, Judge. Any objection? Hearing none, the resolution is adopted. Chair recognizes Senator Springer for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we have joining us in the gallery on the north side is the Boy Scout Troop 75 from Weatherford, Texas. I'd like to recognize the troop. They have 15 scouts that are joining us today in the Senate gallery, along with Scout Leader Bobby Kerman and Lori Story, and the Assistant Scout Leader Howard Story. Troop 75 has dedicated their Eagle Project towards abandoned cemeteries in Parker County, where they cleaned up and built fences. The Scouts have played a pivotal role in shaping the next generation of leaders by instilling the principles of moral character, responsibility, leadership, and service to others. And Scouts, if you could stand up so we can recognize you, and we'd like to thank you for being here today, and welcome to your Texas Capitol.
Welcome, guys. And to the Scout leaders, thank you all. Senator Sparks, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to tell you, I appreciate you guys being here. As an Eagle Scout, I can tell you, it has been a critical thing in my life. All of those things that you guys are learning about now, it's going to make you better people, better citizens, and the state of Texas needs that. I applaud your leaders for taking the time to be here today. And I just want to encourage all of you guys to stick it out because it's worth it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Senator. And I know Senator West, who's not on the floor right now, there he is. 3 sons, Eagle Scouts. Senator West, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
They're right above you there.
They're above me up here? Okay. I want to congratulate you on your journey. I don't know how many of you are life. I don't know where you are on your journey, but make certain you get that Eagle Scout. I had 3 sons at Eagle Scouts, and I'm the president of the Circle 10 Council in Dallas. We had our executive committee meeting at 7:30 this morning.
I remember that.
7:30 this morning, okay? And so I want to congratulate you and welcome you to your state capital and encourage you to continue on your journey to become Eagle Scouts. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator West. Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, want to congratulate you. You know, as an Eagle Scout with the Bronze Palm and Order of the Arrow Brotherhood, I learned things that I've used ever since then, and I still remember every now and then when I use one of the skills I learned in getting one of the merit badges, exactly where it came from. And so I congratulate you on your wise choice of being in the Scouts, and I praise you leaders up there for working with these folks. This is a critical time in their life. This is when you're molding who they're really going to be. And the principles and values that were in the Boy Scouts are things that we need to have more of. So thank you, leaders, for taking the time to work with these kids. God bless you.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Chair lays out the following resolution. Secretary, read the resolution.
SCR 33 by West, recognizing the 60th anniversary of the momentous United States Supreme Court decision rendered in Gideon v. Wainwright.
You're recognized, Senator West.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and members. This is Gideon Day recognizes the landmark United States Supreme Court decision of Gideon versus Wainwright. On March 18th, 1963, the United States Supreme Court unanimously decided that the Constitution of the United States requires states to provide counsel in criminal cases for all persons charged with a felony who cannot afford to hire counsel. Great decision. In later cases, the Supreme Court has expanded that guarantee to include the right to counsel for indigent defendants in cases with the possibility of incarceration and in juvenile cases. In short, lawyers in criminal courts are necessary, not a luxury. While access to counsel is the first step, the promise of Gideon goes further. Without the guiding hand of counsel at every step, Judge Hugo Black wrote, a defendant, though he may not be guilty, he faces the danger of conviction because he does not know how to establish his innocence. Left without the aid of counsel, he may be put on trial without a proper charge and convicted upon incompetent evidence or evidence irrelevant to the issue or otherwise inadmissible. Today in the gallery, I'm going to ask them to stand up. I think they're over here in the West Gallery. Okay, I'm going in the corner over here. I'm going to have the Jeffrey Burkhart, Executive Director, Scott Eller, Director of Public Defense Improvement, and former staff member, and other staff members of the Texas Indigent Defense. Will y'all please stand up and so we can recognize you here in your capital on this, the 60th anniversary of Gideon versus Wainwright. Let's give them a hand, members, for being here. Members of the gallery. Texas Indigent Defense Fund, and Mr. President, I move adoption of Senate Concurrent Resolution 33.
Senator Hinojosa, before we adopt the resolution, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator West, for this SCR 33. I think it's very important to realize that that's a constitutional right that the criminal defendant has in the criminal justice system to be able to be represented by an attorney. It's a very complex, complicated system that we have in place, and even with attorneys, we have innocent people being convicted. So it's important. I worked for legal aid for many years in my younger years, and it was quite an experience. It really takes a certain special type of person to serve as indigent defense counsel for our communities throughout the state of Texas. So I am very proud of the work they do, and also keeping in mind that when a criminal goes before a judge accused of a crime, there is a presumption of innocence. But if you are not represented by an attorney because you're too poor to afford an attorney, the risk of losing your freedom increases tremendously. So thank you, Senator West, and thank you all for the work you do and your commitment to complying, having the courts comply with the Constitution. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Whitmire, what purpose?
We'll like to
Sure. You're recognized.
be recognized. Thank you. Thank you, Senator West, for bringing this to our attention. And as we celebrate, it's an opportunity for us to recognize we have a lot of work left to do. Because we all know the indigent and their defense is critical to our criminal justice system. And we only mentioned yesterday, members, that in Harris County, for instance, we have now recognized an indigent defense attorney who has 600 cases, 600 active cases, members, 400 felonies and 200 misdemeanors. So anytime someone has that caseload representing indigent defendants, we know that there's a lot of work left to do. In fact, I'm searching for a way to limit that kind of caseload, Senator West. You and I know physically it's impossible to represent that many defendants. So let's celebrate this 60th anniversary, but also recommit ourselves to the fine work that our friends in the gallery are doing for the state of Texas. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator West moves adoption of the resolution. Any objection? Hearing none. Resolution is adopted. Great having you all with us today. Thank you, Senators. Senator Hancock.
Members, that concludes the morning call. Senator Hughes, you ready? Senator Hughes, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business and take up Senate Bill 780.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, Senate Bill 780, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business, take up and consider at this time. The bill is about expanding Texas' safe haven law. None of us were here to remember this, or most of us weren't here, Senator Whitmire, but back in 1999, Texas was the first state in the country to pass a safe haven law. We've seen stories in the media from time to time, tragic stories where a newborn is left in a public restroom or a dumpster, or horrible situations like that where, for whatever reason, the mother did not wish to keep the child, and so that's what happened to the child. And so Texas passed this law in 1999 referred to as the Baby Moses Law. And it allows that mother to surrender the child, surrender that newborn child that she does not wish to care for, doesn't wish to raise, to a designated place. The child is taken and cared for. The mother's anonymity is protected. She bears no responsibility for support or anything else. So the child's allowed to have a life and an opportunity for life, and the mother is allowed an alternative to putting the child in danger. That was passed in 1999. We were the first state to do that. Current law does require that the child be surrendered to a staff member. Understandably, the mother must put the child in the hands of a staff member at an authorized agency. 10 states have since addressed another concern. Many times that mom who's surrendering the child, we can imagine what an emotional thing that is, how difficult it might be. Maybe the mom is concerned about her anonymity being protected. So some moms have a difficult time dealing with someone face-to-face to surrender the child. So 10 states now have a provision, as we would in Senate Bill 780, to provide a way for the mother to surrender that child in a safe environment that does not require face-to-face interaction with someone at the agency. The technology exists. Again, 10 states do this. This bill would not make it required, Senator West, but it would allow local agencies to install a device where the baby can be left safely, where the baby is provided for and safe. As soon as the baby is put in this device, the government employees inside the fire station, for example, are immediately notified. They retrieve the child. The mother does not then have to have any face-to-face interaction to surrender that child. And I want to stress, we're talking about an alternative to a mother who might be tempted to abandon the child in a, heaven forbid, a dumpster, a public restroom, or worse. So in a situation like that, Senate Bill 780 would make our current Baby Moses law more effective, help more moms and help more babies. That's what the bill does, and I move suspension of the Senate's regular order of business.
Senator Menendez, for what purpose?
Mr. President, I'd like to see if the gentleman would yield for a few questions.
Senator Hughes, you yield?
Of course I'll yield, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hughes, thank you for your yielding. I want to thank you for bringing this bill forward. We have a very similar piece of legislation, and so I wanted to ask you about this bill because there's just some slight differences that maybe I could help with, and maybe as you think about it and you answer my questions, maybe we could get to an agreement. Does your bill include a provision, let's say an online form, that someone could say, either online or at the box, could provide for any basic medical facts or history? Maybe the baby was born with some medical defect or some situation that we could help the responders understand how to best treat this child or maybe get ahead of something. Is there any provision for that in your legislation?
Well, Senator, thank you. There is not, and I would say because under current law, as you know, great lengths are gone to protect the anonymity and the privacy of the mom, lest she be nervous about surrendering the child. But of course, nothing prevents that mother from putting that information as you're describing. That's a good idea. Of course, I don't think we'd want to require that because it might discourage moms from surrendering those little babies that might otherwise be in danger.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that we require the mom or the person that's bringing forth the child. What I'm saying is, and maybe we in the legislation we call for to have available with the box a document with some simple questions, about the child that maybe would help. So we can think that through. I notice in your bill you have an exclusion of direct exterior access to the device. Is there a reason behind that? Because I would like to add extra precautions in the event that it was difficult to access. And this is one of those areas, it's so hard to figure out. We want the baby to be safe, and we want it to be accessible for the person who is dropping off a baby. So anything we can do to improve that. I'm not sure how you came about the decision on how you access the box.
Senator, that's a great point. And I know that you've had some questions in the district about this and wanted to do something like this. We have too. I should have mentioned a constituent. As you know, many times our best bills come from folks back home.
Absolutely.
And a dear lady brought this idea to us session before last. And we had a bill, and there was a companion in the House. The bill in the House got slowed down, and so we did not get this done. So we're starting in the Senate this time. But to answer your question, there were concerns raised over in the House about whether we were being too prescriptive about what the device should look like. So this version reflects some changes that we hope will make members of the House more comfortable with the bill. I'm with you. It needs to be accessible. As odd as this may sound, in other states, the device is not unlike like a bank drive-through window, right, where you can access that drawer, if you will, from the outside. It's climate controlled, it's safe, and as soon as the baby goes inside, an alarm goes off so that the EMTs, the healthcare workers on the inside, can immediately retrieve that little baby and care for her. So I believe we're thinking about the same thing.
And you're absolutely right. I was called by a councilman in San Antonio, Councilman John Courage, who he and his team have been working on this issue for quite some time. And the last question that I have that maybe you may have addressed it was, does it provide, because I think it has an alarm that you talk about, but does that alarm actually alert, like with a call or some sort of EMS signal that goes out to the EMTs saying there's a child that has been delivered, you need to respond?
Yes, sir, it's a great point. It's required to be an audible alarm. So not just lights, but it has to make a sound. So they have to know what it is and know to immediately go and retrieve the little baby. That's exactly right.
And I'm not sure if this technology, I would assume it's there, because I think some of those blue boxes you see on university campuses, when you answer the phone, it goes directly to a 911 type of call. If there's the capacity to alert EMS without yes, that's fine about the audible noise, but something that actually puts a call in to a fire station that says, there's been a delivery made, you need to respond.
I see what you mean. And let me answer the question this way. Under current law, the only place that the baby can be handed off, again, before this bill passes, are emergency medical service providers, so where the EMTs are.
Right.
And then then hospitals, where obviously emergency management workers are, and certain child placing agencies. When we think about the Baby Moses law, we often think of fire stations. But under current Texas law, the fire station is not on the list. So this would add fire stations, again, if they choose to, if they're equipped to add this equipment. So the idea is the baby's only going to be left somewhere where those emergency personnel are there on duty. Is that what you're talking about?
That's pretty much where I was going. Now, in our legislation, the last paragraph, we asked for a report from the Department of Family and Protective Services to let us know the number of children that have been voluntarily delivered to a designated emergency infant care provider, location of those providers, method by which we would like to see as the legislature, is this a problem? Is it a problem in certain parts of our state? And so I'm not sure if your bill calls for a report. If it doesn't, I'm happy to show you the language, and maybe we can work together on something like that.
Senator, thank you. I don't believe our bill calls for a report, and I would certainly welcome something like that.
Thank you for taking my questions. Appreciate your legislation. Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Hughes moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 780. Is there an objection? The chair hears none. The rules are suspended. The chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 780. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 780 relating to emergency possession of certain abandoned children by designated emergency infant care providers.
Senator Hughes, you recognize for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment, Senate Bill 780.
Senator Hughes moves passage to engrossment. Is there an objection? The chair hears none. The bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Hughes now recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move suspension of the constitutional rule. The bills be read on 3 several days.
Senator Hughes moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hall.
There being 30 ayes and no nays, the rules are suspended. The chair now lays out on final passage Senate Bill 780. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 780 relating to emergency possession of certain abandoned children by designated emergency infant care providers.
Senator Hughes, you recognize for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage, Senate Bill 780.
Senator Hughes moves final passage on Senate Bill 780. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez.
There being 30 ayes and no nays, Senate Bill 780 is finally passed. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members. Hey, let's do a...
Senator Perry, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business and take up and consider Senate Bill 156.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Senate Bill 156 is a refile from last session and a couple of sessions previous close to this, which passed off the Senate floor unanimously. It's a landowners groundwater conservation district tools for more transparency, gives attorney's fees discretion to the judge. Additionally, some guidance on when a DFC is being challenged, and in that time period when it's challenged and settled. With that, I move suspend the regular order of business.
Senator Perry moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 156. Is there an objection? The chair hears none. The rules are suspended. The chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 156. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 156 relating to the regulation of groundwater conservation districts.
Senator Hughes, you recognize for a motion. Senator Perry, you recognize for a motion. That was Hughes while ago. Senator Perry moves passage to engrossment. Is there an objection? The chair hears none. Senate Bill 156 is passed to engrossment. Senator Perry, you are now recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Move to suspend the 3-day rule.
Senator Perry moves suspension of the 3-day rule. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa.
There being 30 ayes and no nays, the rules are suspended. The chair now lays out on third reading and final passage Senate Bill 156. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 156 relating to the regulation of groundwater conservation districts.
Senator Perry, you recognize for a motion.
Move final passage.
Senator Perry moves final passage of Senate Bill 156. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart.
There being 30 ayes and no nays, Senate Bill 156 is finally passed. Senator Birdwell, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 599.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business, take up and consider Senate Bill 599. Members, this bill passed unanimously out of State Affairs Committee. Members, this bill simply adds district clerks to the number or the paragraph regarding judicial officers and certain officers of the court in regards to obtaining a license to carry and carrying handguns in their place of work in our county courthouses. Members, I move suspension.
Senator Birdwell moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 599. Is there an objection? The chair hears none. The rules are suspended. The chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 599. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 599 relating to the carrying or possession of a handgun by a district clerk and the issuance of a handgun license to a district clerk.
Senator Birdwell, you're recognized for a motion.
I move passage to engrossment, Mr. President.
Senator Birdwell moves passage to engrossment. Is there an objection? Chair hears none. Senate Bill 599 is passed to engrossment. Senator Birdwell, you're now recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Senator Birdwell moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores.
There being 30 ayes and no nays, the 3-day rule is suspended. The chair now lays out on third reading and final passage Senate Bill 599. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 599 relating to the carrying or possession of a handgun by a district clerk.
Senator Birdwell, you're recognized for a motion.
Move final passage, Mr. President.
Senator Birdwell moves final passage Senate Bill 599. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores.
There being 30 ayes and no nays, Senate Bill 599 is finally passed.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Zaffirini, you recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 497.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider at this time Senate Bill 497, which was recommended for the local and uncontested calendar. It relates to the processing and sale of Creighton and Creighton products. Generally, it would require proper labeling of Creighton products with use instructions and recommended serving size and prohibit the sale of an unlabeled Creighton. It would prohibit its sale if it's adulterated or contaminated, or if it has any unnatural alkaloid levels. It would prohibit its distribution or sale to persons younger than 18, and it would establish escalating civil penalties for violations and authorize the Attorney General or District, County, or Municipal Attorneys to bring an action to recover civil penalties. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Senator Zaffirini moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 497. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the rules are suspended. The chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 497. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 497 relating to the processing and sale of Kratom and Kratom products.
Senator Zaffirini, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Zaffirini moves passage to engrossment of Senate Bill 497. Is there an objection? Chair hears none. Senate Bill 497 is passed to engrossment. Senator Zaffirini, you're now recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the 3-day rule.
Senator Zaffirini moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart.
There being 30 ayes and no nays, the 3-day rule is suspended. The chair now lays out on third reading and final passage Senate Bill 497. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 497 relating to the processing and sale of Kratom and Kratom products.
Senator Zaffirini, you recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Senator Zaffirini moves final passage on Senate Bill 497. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, King, Colcourse.
There being 28 ayes and 2 nays, Senate Bill 497 is finally passed.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Hughes, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business. Take up and consider Senate Bill 801.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider at this time Senate Bill 801. Members, this is a true cleanup bill. In Texas, if you want to convey property to a trust, you must convey that property in the name of the trustee. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and folks will mistakenly try to convey something to the trust, not to John Doe, trustee for the trust. When you do that, it messes up the conveyance. Texas law is kind of fuzzy on what happens. This bill would clean that up. It's not a controversial matter, and I move suspension.
Senator Hughes moves suspension of regular order of business on Senate Bill 801. Is there an objection? Chair hears none. The rules are suspended. The chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 801. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 801 relating to an instrument that names a trust as a party.
Senator Hughes, you're recognized for a motion.
I move passage to engrossment, Mr. President.
Senator Hughes moves passage to engrossment. Is there an objection? Chair hears none. Senate Bill 801 is passed to engrossment. Senator Hughes, you are now recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
That's my motion, Mr. President.
Senator Hughes moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart.
There being 30 ayes and no nays, the rules are suspended. The chair lays out on third reading and final passage Senate Bill 801. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 801 relating to an instrument that names a trust as a party.
Senator Hughes, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move final passage.
Senator Hughes moves final passage on Senate Bill 801. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores.
There being 30 ayes and no nays, Senate Bill 801 is finally passed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Senator Zaffarini, you recognize for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 643.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider at this time Senate Bill 643 relating to the conduct of charitable bingo. It was recommended for the local and uncontested calendar and is a companion to a House bill. Members, this bill simply would conform an out-of-date reference to the Texas Nonprofit Corporation Act to the current provision of the Business Occupation Code in several ways, including increasing the limit on regular licenses from 24 to 48 per year, streamlining the licensure process, clarifying that persons may not play bingo for credit, and increase the prize per occasion limit from $2,500 to $5,000, which had not been updated in 30 years. It would establish parity between a group of charities operating at one location and a single charity regarding when they must deposit proceeds. It would give charities 24 months to achieve net positive proceeds, make conforming changes that ensure legislation passed in 2019 allowing charities to pay prize fees to local governments continues to apply in the future, and clarify that specific provisions require charities to pay prize fees to the Lottery Commission instead of paying them to local governments. Finally, it would ensure that charities who paid rent to hold their slots in bingo halls during the COVID pandemic remain eligible for Commission pandemic relief programs. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Senator Zaffarini moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 643. Is there an objection? Chair hears none. The rules are suspended. The chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 643. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 643 relating to the conduct of charitable bingo.
Senator Zaffarini, you are recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Zaffarini moves passage to engrossment. Senate Bill 643. Is there an objection? Chair hears none. Senate Bill 643 is passed to engrossment. Senator Zaffarini, you are now recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional three-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. So moved.
Senator Zaffarini moves suspension of the three-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez.
There being 30 ayes and no nays, the three-day rule is suspended. The chair now lays out on third reading and final passage Senate Bill 643. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 643 relating to the conduct of charitable bingo.
Senator Zaffarini, you are recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Senator Zaffarini moves final passage Senate Bill 643. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez.
There being 29 ayes and one nay, Senate Bill 643 is finally passed.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
The following motion in writing. Secretary will read the motion.
Motion in writing. Mr. President, I'm asking unanimous consent for SJR 59, proposing a constitutional amendment regarding the time during which the legislature may act on bills or resolutions during a regular session, to be withdrawn from the Committee on Administration and re-referred to the Committee on State Affairs. Author, Senator Birdwell. Senator Hall, chair committee from which bill is being withdrawn. Senator Hughes, chair committee to which bill is being re-referred.
Is there an objection to the motion? Chair hears none. Motion is adopted. Chair announces the signing of the following in the presence of the Senate.
House Concurrent Resolution number 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 23, 25, 35, 66, 67, 68.
The President's desk is clear. Are there any announcements? The chair recognizes the Dean of the Senate for a highly privileged motion.
President, members.
1 sec, Senator Whitmire. Chair recognizes Senator Birdwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Committee on Border Security will reconvene at 12:30 in room E1016 to continue our hearing. Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Whitmire, we have one more announcement. Senator Paxton, for what purpose?
President, to make an announcement. The Senate State Affairs Committee will reconvene 30 minutes upon adjournment here in the chamber.
Thank you. All right. Now the chair recognizes the Dean of the Senate for a highly privileged motion.
Chair. Mr. President, members, I move that the Senate adjourn until 3 p.m. Members, 3 p.m. Monday, March 20th, pending the reading and referral of bills.
Is there an objection? The chair hears none. Motion's adopted. The Senate stands adjourned until 3 p.m. Monday, March 20th, pending the reading and referral of bills.
Interns, residents, and fellows receiving a clinical education at public or nonprofit hospitals receive an annual comprehensive health examination to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1327 by Blanco relating to authorizing a daycare center to employ an interim director to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1328 by Blanco relating to common nuisance remedies and registration and permitting requirements for the storage of scrap tires to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1329 by Blanco relating to establishing the Defense and Aerospace Manufacturing Task Force to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1330 by Perry relating to the exchange of certain information between the Department of Family and Protective Services or certain foster care service contractors to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1331 by Perry relating to a motion for the assignment of a statutory probate court judge to hear a contested matter to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1332 by Huffman relating to the provision of funding to the Texas Historical Commission for state historic sites to finance. Senate Bill 1333 by Huffman relating to the creation of the Texas State Buildings Preservation Endowment Fund to finance. Senate Bill 1334 by Creighton relating to rates established by municipalities for water or sewer service for certain entities to local government. Senate Bill 1335 by Creighton relating to dedicating certain state revenue to the purpose of retiring state debt to finance. Senate Bill 1336 by Creighton relating to certain construction liability claims concerning public buildings and public works to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1337 by Hall relating to the practice of barbering and cosmetology to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1338 by Hall relating to the eligibility of certain persons to vote early by mail to state affairs. Senate Bill 1339 by Middleton and Creighton relating to the designation of a bridge in Galveston County as the Ken Clark Memorial Bridge to transportation. Senate Bill 1340 by Zaffarini relating to the local development agreement database maintained by the Comptroller of Public Accounts to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1341 by West relating to the application review process for certain delayed birth certificates to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1342 by Perry relating to requirements applicable to certain third-party health insurers in relation to Medicaid to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1343 by La Mantia relating to the composition of the Texas Board of Nursing and Procedures applicant to complaints to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1344 by Nichols relating to advertising of certain used motor vehicles to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1345 by Miles relating to prohibiting the consideration of certain criminal history information of a prospective tenant of a housing development to local government. Senate Bill 1346 by Miles relating to the prosecution of certain littering offenses to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1347 by Miles relating to certain healthcare entities and medical committees to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1348 by Miles relating to the use of state money for the Urban Farm Micro Enterprise Support Program to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1349 by Zaffarini relating to the authority of an appraisal district to purchase, finance the purchase of, or lease real property, or construct or finance the construction of improvements to real property to local government. Senate Bill 1350 by Lamantia relating to the exemption of tuition and laboratory fees at public institutions of higher education for certain paramedics to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1351 by Perry et al. Relating to the functions of the Texas Water Development Board to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1352 by Miles relating to the recovery of exemplary damages based on a compensable death under the Texas Workers' Compensation Act to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1353 by Miles relating to the applicability of the death penalty to a capital offense committed by a person with an intellectual disability to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1354 by Miles relating to the Rita Littlefield Chronic Kidney Disease Centralized Resource Center to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1355 by Miles relating to requiring law enforcement agencies to make certain radio communications available to the public to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1356 by Miles West and Eckhart relating to discrimination on the basis of hair texture to state affairs. Senate Bill 1357 by Miles relating to including certain demographic information in federal incident-based reporting to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1358 by Miles relating to the financing of certain grocery stores by a public facilities corporation to local government. Senate Bill 1359 by Schwertner relating to reporting on the use of telemedicine medical services to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1360 by Schwertner relating to the renewal of a registration permit by a physician to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1361 by Huffman relating to the unlawful production or distribution of sexually explicit videos to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1362 by Alvarado relating to hiring and licensing certain individuals lawfully present in the United States to state affairs. Senate Bill 1363 by Alvarado relating to enforcement by a property owners association of a restrictive covenant that prevents a property owner from building or installing certain security measures to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1364 by Alvarado relating to weight limitations for certain natural gas or electric vehicles to transportation. Senate Bill 1365 by Hinojosa relating to a grant program to fund the provision by children's hospitals of mental and behavioral health services to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1366 by Creighton relating to directing certain surplus state revenue to the Flood Infrastructure Fund to finance. Senate Bill 1367 by Creighton relating to the confidentiality of certain information for full-time employees of a county courthouse to state affairs. Senate Bill 1368 by Schwertner et al. Relating to the continuation and functions of the Public Utility Commission of Texas to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1369 by Paxton and Parker relating to training materials for certain transportation network company drivers to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1370 by Paxton relating to information contained in the annual financial audit of certain regional transportation authorities to transportation. Senate Bill 1371 by Johnson relating to the regulation of consumer credit transactions to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1372 by Perry relating to the costs associated with the destruction of certain deer to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1373 by Hughes relating to decedents' estates and the delivery of certain notices of other communications in connection with those estates or multi-party accounts to state affairs. Senate Bill 1374 by Parker relating to the right of a purchaser to terminate a contract of purchase and sale of real property to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1375 by Parker relating to the sampling or tasting of distilled spirits to state affairs. Senate Bill 1376 by Parker relating to the state employment preference for certain spouses of veterans with a disability to Veteran Affairs. Senate Bill 1377 by Parker relating to the selection of the chief appraiser of an appraisal district to local government. Senate Bill 1378 by Parker relating to the procurement and operation of backup generation facilities for the ERCOT Power region to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1379 by Parker and West relating to a pilot program to increase the financial independence of foster children who are transitioning to independent living, Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1380 by Eckhart relating to training for peace officers on acquired and traumatic brain injuries to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1381 by Eckhart et al. Relating to the eligibility of the surviving spouse of an elderly person who qualified for a local option exemption from ad valorem taxation to local government. Senate Bill 1382 by Eckhart relating to contracting with companies that boycott certain energy companies to natural resources and economic development. Senate Bill 1383 by Miles relating to the eligibility of certain criminal defendants or an order of non-disclosure of criminal history record information to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1384 by Miles relating to the establishment of the Child First Grant Program to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1385 by Miles relating to the age of a child at which a juvenile court may exercise jurisdiction over the child to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1386 by Miles and Eckhart relating to the creation of the Office of Independent Oversight Ombudsman for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1387 by Hughes relating to an agreement with a private entity for dynamic message signs used in certain statewide alert systems to transportation. Senate Bill 1388 by Parker relating to prohibiting the operation of supervised drug consumption sites to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1389 by Parker relating to authorizing adoption assistance agreements for certain children to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1390 by Parker relating to requiring the Department of Family and Protective Services to annually review the department's process to enter into adoption assistance agreements to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1391 by Parker relating to restitution payments made to certain victims of theft to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1392 by Middleton relating to establishing the Oyster Council of the Parks and Wildlife Department to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1393 by Middleton relating to eligibility for coverage under the Fair Plan Association in certain areas to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1394 by Middleton relating to the issuance of anticipation notes or other obligations by issuers located along the Gulf Coast in an emergency to local government. Senate Bill 1395 by Middleton relating to requirements for the closure of certain areas to the taking of oysters to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1396 by Middleton relating to a period of prayer and Bible reading in public schools to education. Senate Bill 1397 by Schwertner et al. Relating to continuation and functions of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1398 by Schwertner relating to air quality permits for aggregate production operations and concrete batch plants to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1399 by Schwertner relating to renewal and review of certain air quality permits to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1400 by Springer et al. Relating to the continuation and functions of the Office of State Federal Relations to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1401 by Zaffarini and Paxton relating to the rights of victims of sexual assault to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1402 by Zaffarini and Paxton relating to the continuation and duties of the Sexual Assault Survivors Task Force to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1474 by Betancourt and Paxton relating to special education in public schools to education. Senate Bill 1403 by Parker relating to an interstate compact for border security to border security. Senate Bill 1404 by Parker relating to the creation of a work group to study the benefits of coal to nuclear electric generating facility conversion to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1405 by Hancock relating to exempting certain auto cycles from the requirement that an operator or passenger of an autocycle wear protective headgear to transportation. Senate Bill 1406 by Perry and Springer relating to suspension of an enforcement action against a regional water supply, sewer, or wastewater treatment service to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1497 by King relating to a severance tax exemption for oil and gas produced from certain restimulation wells to finance. Senate Bill 1408 by Miles relating to establishment of the Texas Rare Disease Advisory Council to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1409 by Miles relating to the continuation of a limitation on increases in the appraised value of a resident's homestead for ad valorem tax purposes to local government. Senate Bill 1410 by Miles relating to state funding for school districts to which an academically unacceptable school district is annexed to education. Senate Bill 1411 by Miles relating to Medicaid coverage and reimbursement for emergency outpatient dialysis treatment to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1412 by Hughes relating to the regulation of accessory dwelling units by political subdivisions to local government. Senate Bill 1413 by Johnson relating to the authority of a fire department to remove certain personal property from a roadway or right-of-way to transportation. Senate Bill 1414 by Johnson et al. Relating to the regulation of the practice of veterinary medicine to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1415 by Johnson relating to the regulation of certain continuing education programs to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1416 by Johnson relating to the processing of an application for an authorization to use a standard permit for a rock or concrete crushing facility to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1417 by Johnson relating to company representatives for private security companies to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1418 by La Mantilla relating to the route designation for the issuance of a permit for the movement of oversized and overweight vehicles to transportation. Senate Bill 1419 by Birdwell relating to limitations on the use of public money under certain economic development agreements or programs to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1420 by Birdwell relating to municipal and county hotel occupancy taxes to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1421 1421 by Perry et al. Relating to the effect of nuisance actions to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1422 by King relating to the enforcement of criminal offenses by state agencies to state affairs. Senate Bill 1423 by Hall relating the prohibition of tolls on the portion of Interstate Highway 635 to transportation. Senate Bill 1424 by Perry et al. Relating to the continuation and functions of the State Soil and Water Conservation Board to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1425 by Perry and Springer relating to the continuation of the distribution of universal service funds to certain small and rural incumbent local exchange companies to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1426 by Flores relating to municipal regulation of the removal of an ash juniper tree to local government. Senate Bill 1428 by Nichols relating to prohibition on issuance of the Railroad Commission of Texas of a permit for certain commercial service disposal facilities to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1429 by Hinojosa relating to the use of standardized examinations by a school of nursing or educational program to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2354 by Betancourt relating to the establishment of the Education Savings Account Program to education. Senate Bill 1430 by Hinojosa and Lamantia relating to the provision of solid waste disposal services by certain counties to local government. Senate Bill 1431 by Hinojosa relating to the confidentiality of certain information for a current or former administrative law judge to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1432 by Hinojosa relating to the operation and administration of the State Office of Administrative Hearings to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1433 by Hinojosa relating to procedures for the emergency detention of certain persons with mental illness to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1434 by Hinojosa relating to the requirement that certain persons taking oysters on a licensed commercial oyster boat obtain a commercial fisherman's license to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1435 by Hinojosa relating to creating the criminal offense of tampering with an electronic monitoring device to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1436 by Hinojosa relating to the investigation of municipal firefighters in certain municipalities to local government. Senate Bill 1437 by Springer relating to the establishment of the Emergency Powers Board to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1438 by Springer relating to a credit or refund for diesel fuel taxes paid on diesel fuel to finance. Senate Bill 1439 by Springer relating to the ad valorem taxation of tangible personal property held or used for the production of income by related business entities to local government. Senate Bill 1440 by Springer relating to the processing of certain credit card transactions to state affairs. Senate Bill 1441 by Springer relating to the authority of the Attorney General to acquire by eminent domain certain real property owned by aliens or foreign entities to state affairs. Senate Bill 1442 by Springer relating to the creation of a campus on the Texas State Technical College system to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1443 by Hall relating to public school library materials and certain performances at public school facilities to education. Senate Bill 1444 by Zaffarini, Flores, and Eckhart relating to the public retirement systems for employees of certain municipalities to finance. Senate Bill 1445 by Paxton et al. Relating to the continuation and functions of the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1446 by Hughes relating to the fiduciary responsibility of the governing body of the public retirement systems in this state to state affairs. Senate Bill 1447 by Miles relating to training program for persons investigating suspected child abuse or neglect to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1448 by Miles relating to the location for which a wholesale motor vehicle dealer general distinguishing number may be issued to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1449 by Miles relating to the authority of the Harris County Hospital District to employ and commission peace officers to local government. Senate Bill 1450 by Miles relating to certain improvements to the state highway system in certain census tracts to transportation. Senate Bill 1451 by Zaffarini relating to the powers of the Texas Historical Commission over historic sites in the state to natural resources and economic development. Senate Bill 1452 by Zaffarini relating to the loss of benefits of and the payment of certain employer contributions for certain retirees of the teacher retirement system of Texas who resumed service to finance. Senate Bill 1453 by Hinojosa relating to the authority of a local government to enter into energy savings performance contracts to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1454 by Paxton and Zaffarini relating to the reappraisal for ad valorem taxation purposes of real property on which a building completely destroyed by a casualty is located to local government. Senate Bill 1455 by Paxton relating to the eligibility of land for appraisal for ad valorem tax purposes as qualified open space land at local government. Senate Bill 1456 by Lamantia and Hinojosa relating to credit against required recapture payments for certain school districts with excess facilities cost to education. Senate Bill 1457 by Zaffarini relating to guardianships and the delivery of certain notices or other communications in connection with guardianship proceedings to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1458 by Miles relating to the provision of certain information about Medicaid benefits in relation to newborn children to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1459 by Miles relating to benefits and incentives for media production in this state to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1460 by Miles relating to incentives for the moving image industry in this state to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1461 by Springer relating to regulation of online global marketplaces to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1462 by Hughes relating to the operation and administration of and practices and procedures related to proceedings in the judicial branch of state government to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1463 by West and Blanco relating to a grant program for a nonprofit organization or political subdivision to establish or expand a behavioral health crisis response program to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1464 by West relating to prohibiting a retail seller of motor vehicles from imposing certain restrictions on the purchase of a motor vehicle to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1465 by Springer relating to costs associated with and procedures for the assessment and destruction of certain deer to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1466 by Hancock relating to the regulation of residential amenity rentals by a political subdivision to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1467 by Hancock relating to the disclosure of certain medical information by electronic means to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1468 by Springer relating to the taking of wildlife by an employee of the Parks and Wildlife Department to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1469 by Betancourt relating to requiring certain information before being employed by a child care facility to education. Senate Bill 1470 by Betancourt relating to access to the registry of persons who are not eligible for employment in public schools to education. Senate Bill 1471 by Betancourt relating to access by the Texas Education Agency and private schools to certain criminal history records to education. Senate Bill 1472 by Betancourt relating to central registry of names of individuals found to have abused or neglected a child to education. Senate Bill 1473 by Betancourt relating to criminal history record information and certain registry information accessible to certain educational and child care entities to education. Senate Bill 1475 by Creighton relating to licensure and training requirements for school marshals to education. Senate Bill 1476 by Creighton relating to a franchise tax credit for taxable entities that purchase certain theft, deterrent, and property loss prevention equipment to finance. Senate Bill 1477 by Colcourse relating to active shooter training for peace officers to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1478 by West relating to the creation of a grant matching program for the federal small business innovation research and small business technology transfer programs to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1479 by Menendez relating to state recognition of the Tapilam Coahuilcan Nation to state affairs. Senate Bill 1480 by Menendez relating to the allocations of low-income housing tax credits to local governments. Senate Bill 1481 by Creighton relating to the exercise of eminent domain authority by the Texas Facilities Commission to border security. Senate Bill 1482 by Creighton relating to the manufacture or delivery of a controlled substance or marijuana causing death or serious bodily injury to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1483 by Creighton and King relating to the creation of a retail theft investigation unit in the Department of Public Safety to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1484 by Creighton relating to a border operations training program for peace officers employed by local law enforcement agencies to border security. Senate Bill 1485 by Hall relating to the public inspection of election records to state affairs. Senate Bill 1486 by Betancourt et al. Relating to the electronic payment of ad valorem taxes to local government. Senate Bill 1487 by Betancourt et al. Relating to the electronic delivery of certain communications required or permitted under the property tax code to local government. Senate Bill 1488 by Creighton relating to truancy and the offense of a parent contributing to non-attendance to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1489 by Creighton relating to prohibiting the investment of the Permanent University Fund, the National Research University Fund, or money held by a public institution of higher education in financial companies that boycott certain energy companies to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1490 by Miles relating to the state historically underutilized business program to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1491 by Miles relating to the licensing in this state of a person licensed in another jurisdiction to practice psychology to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1492 by Miles relating to the expunction of records and files related to certain conduct or offenses committed by a child to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1493 by Miles relating to the licensing in the state of a person licensed in another jurisdiction to practice marriage and family therapy to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1494 by Hall relating to prohibiting certain obscene sexually oriented performances within view of minors, to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1495 by Johnson relating to the confidentiality of certain information collected by certain airport governing boards at a parking garage, to Transportation. Senate Bill 1496 by Johnson relating to authorizing certain health benefit exchanges to make eligibility determinations under Medicaid, to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1497 by Colcourse relating to the Law Enforcement Agency Training Grant Program, to Criminal Justice. Senate Bill 1498 by Nichols relating to the collection, remittance, and administration of the tax on gross rental receipts on motor vehicles, to Finance. Senate Bill 1499 by Nichols relating to the funding of certain port projects, to Transportation. Senate Bill 1500 by Nichols relating to powers and duties of navigation districts, to Transportation. Senate Bill 1502 by Middleton relating to prohibited conduct of a health benefit plan issuer in relation to affiliated and non-affiliated providers, to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1503 by Middleton relating to an entity responsible for the local share of qualified project costs under the Ship Channel Improvement Revolving Fund, to Transportation. Senate Bill 1504 by Middleton relating to the automatic admission of students with a non-traditional secondary education to certain public institutions of higher education, to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1505 by Zaffarani and Perry relating to youth diversion strategies, to Criminal Justice. Senate Bill 1506 by Hughes relating to a seizure management and treatment plan for the care to be provided by public school to a student with a seizure disorder, to Education. Senate Bill 1507 by Huffman relating to directing payment after approval of certain miscellaneous claims and judgments against the state out of funds designated by this act, to Finance. Senate Bill 1508 by Huffman relating to the creation and recreation of funds and accounts, the dedication and rededication of revenue and allocation of accrued interest on dedicated revenue, to Finance. Senate Bill 1509 by Huffman relating to the service retirement eligibility and benefits of certain members of the Employees Retirement System of Texas, to Finance. Senate Bill 1510 by West relating to supplemental payment for retirees of the Employees Retirement System of Texas, to Finance. Senate Bill 1511 by Schwertner relating to the evaluation of child care providers participating in the Texas Rising Star Program, to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1512 by Schwertner relating to the failure to disclose certain appraisal reports by an entity with eminent domain authority, to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1513 by Schwertner relating to certain requirements in connection with acquisition of real property for public use by an entity with eminent domain authority, to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1514 by Schwertner relating to business entities and nonprofit entities, to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1515 by King relating to the display of the Ten Commandments in public schools, to Education. Senate Bill 1516 by King relating to the procedures for an application for a writ of habeas corpus, to Criminal Justice. Senate Bill 1517 by King relating to academic boycotts at institutions of higher education, to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1518 by King relating to the establishment of a terrorist offender registry, to Border Security. Senate Bill 1519 by King relating to electric utility weather emergency preparedness, to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1520 by Hughes relating to the authority of the Texas Historical Commission to take certain actions relating to the Republic of Texas granite boundary marker, to the Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1521 by Blanco relating to the amount of certain motor vehicle sales and use taxes and penalties that certain counties may retain each year, to Finance. Senate Bill 1522 by Blanco relating to a required waiting period for certain semi-automatic rifle sales, to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1523 by Blanco relating to the dismissal of a baseless or unfounded complaint filed with the State Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners, to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1524 by Blanco and Menendez relating to the authority of the Texas Department of Transportation to provide department services on federal military property, to Transportation. Senate Bill 1525 by Blanco relating to the confidentiality of certain home address information and property tax appraisal records, to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill to by Blanco relating to the provision of mobile emergency medical services to local government. Senate Bill 1527 by Huffman and Blanco relating to human trafficking, to Criminal Justice. Senate Bill 1528 by Colcourse relating to the publication of a report providing an overview of public education in Texas, to Education. Senate Bill 1529 by Blanco relating to notice to property owners regarding certain stationary LP gas installations, to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1530 by Miles relating to reporting the blast radius information for above-ground storage tanks to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1531 by Miles relating to written objections to the proposed installation or modification of a stationary LP gas installation to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1532 by Miles relating to the confidentiality of certain home address information and property tax appraisal records to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1533 by Miles relating to the expunction of records and files related to certain conduct or offenses committed by a child to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1534 by Schwertner relating to restrictions on covenants not to compete for physicians and certain other healthcare practitioners to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1535 by West relating to the review and modification of bail for certain defendants to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1536 by Parker relating to the persons who may provide information to a parole panel considering the release of an inmate on parole to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1537 by Parker et al. Relating to measures to prevent espionage and intellectual property theft to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1538 by Parker relating to authorizing certain counties to impose a hotel occupancy tax to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1539 by Parker relating to terminology used to refer to an individualized education program team to Education. Senate Bill 1540 by Parker relating to the Occupational Therapy Licensure Compact to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1541 by Parker relating to the charging of swipe fees on certain electronic payment transactions to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1542 by Parker relating to the designation of a portion of U.S. Highway 380 in Wise and Jack counties as the Lost Battalion Memorial Highway to transportation. Senate Bill 1543 by Parker relating to the creation of a workplace violence hotline to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1544 by Johnson relating to the use of an individual's genetic data by certain genetic testing companies for commercial purposes to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1545 by Bettencourt relating to the maximum size of a municipality's extraterritorial jurisdiction to local government. Senate Bill 1546 by Bettencourt relating to the authority of a special district to exercise a right of power outside the district's boundaries to local government. Senate Bill 1547 by Colcourse relating to permissible uses of the school safety allotment under the public school finance system to education. Senate Bill 1548 by Zaffarini relating to the authority of a county to adopt a fire code to local government. Senate Bill 1549 by Blanco relating to the exemption from the severance tax for gas produced from certain wells that is consumed on site to finance. Senate Bill 1550 by Blanco and West relating to the financial security requirements for operators of oil and gas wells to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1551 by West relating to the prosecution of the criminal offense of failure to identify to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1552 by Miles relating to affirmative defenses for a Texas Commission on Environmental Quality Enforcement action to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1553 by Miles relating to job interview restrictions for releasees from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1554 by Miles relating to the location qualifications for a standard permit for certain concrete plants to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1555 by Miles relating to air quality permits for aggregate production operations to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1556 by Parker relating to the right of public school employee to engage in religious speech or prayer while on duty to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1557 by Parker relating to providing for an election by the parent of a student who was victimized by a public school employee to transfer the student to another public school campus to education. Senate Bill 1558 by Parker relating to the use of certain gold or silver bullion or specie as legal tender to finance. Senate Bill 1559 by Parker relating to contributions to, benefits under, and administration of Texas local firefighters retirement systems to finance. Senate Bill 1560 by Creighton relating to the removal, relocation, alteration, or construction of certain monuments or memorials located on public property to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1561 by Zaffarini relating to the applicability of the job order contracting procurement method to certain buildings and structures to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1566 by Hancock and Huffman relating to creating the criminal offense of child grooming to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1563 by Creighton relating to the eligibility of Sam Houston State University to receive formula funding for the Sam Houston State University College of Osteopathic Medicine to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1564 by Hancock relating to a severance tax credit for gas produced from certain wells that use an on-site flare mitigation system to finance. Senate Bill 1565 by Hughes relating to policy frameworks for research security established by public institutions of Higher Education to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1566 by Hughes, relating to the use of certain personal leave by school district teachers to education. Senate Bill 1567 by Campbell, relating to requiring public schools to maintain physical copies of certain instructional materials to education. Senate Bill 1568 by Campbell, relating to the persons authorized or appointed to exercise the power of sale under the terms of a contract lien on real property to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1569 by Campbell, relating to the review of the creation of certain proposed municipal utility districts by county commissioners' courts to local government. Senate Bill 1570 by Flores, relating to the limitations period for certain criminal offenses based on assaultive conduct to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1571 by Colcourse, relating to complaints filed by a school district regarding the offense of contributing to truancy by a parent to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1572 by Hughes, relating to the designation of a portion of State Highway 49 in Titus County as the Titus County World War I Veterans Memorial Highway to transportation. Senate Bill 1573 by Hughes, relating to the designation of a portion of Farm to Market Road 2348 in Titus County as the Army Staff Sergeant Clay Allen Craig Memorial Bridge to transportation. Senate Bill 1574 by Schwertner, relating to the right of an insured to enter into a contract with a public insurance adjuster to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1575 by Middleton, relating to the authority of a member of the State Board of Education to request an Attorney General opinion to state affairs. Senate Bill 1576 by Schwertner, relating to the effect of certain reductions in a health benefit plan enrollees' out-of-pocket expenses for certain prescription drugs to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1577 by Menendez and Schwertner, relating to the Texas Real Estate Research Center to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1578 by Menendez, relating to private transfer fee obligations to state affairs. Senate Bill 1579 by Betancourt, relating to expedited response by a governmental body to a request for public information to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1580 by Betancourt, relating to the right to try cutting-edge treatments for patients with life-threatening or severely debilitating illnesses to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1581 by Betancourt, relating to the establishment of the Texas Health Insurance Mandate Advisory Committee to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1582 by Betancourt, relating to the sale of charitable raffle tickets by certain nonprofit wildlife conservation associations to state affairs. Senate Bill 1583 by Hall, relating to prohibiting institutions of higher education or entities receiving public funds from conducting gain-of-function research on potentially pandemic pathogens to state affairs. Senate Bill 1584 by Hall, relating to certain autologous and direct blood donations, Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1585 by Sparks and Perry, relating to certain proceedings in juvenile court for children with mental illness and intellectual disabilities to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1586 by Hughes, relating to the establishment of a grant program to provide certain public school students an opportunity to visit the state capitol to education. Senate Bill 1587 by Johnson, relating to the county in which an application for court-ordered mental health services must be filed to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1588 by Blanco, relating to variances from Department of State Health Services rules governing the provision of emergency medical services to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1589 by Creighton, relating to a statewide disaster alert system to state affairs. Senate Bill 1590 by Lamantia, relating to the Rural Veterinarian Incentive Program to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1591 by Lamantia, relating to the locations of the campuses of the Texas State Technical College system to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1592 by Lamantia, relating to the composition of the Radiation Advisory Board to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1593 by Lamantia, relating to the procedure for amending or revoking certificates of public convenience and necessity issued to certain retail public utilities to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1594 by Hancock, relating to the authority of an independent organization certified to manage a power region to amend bylaws and certificates of formation to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1595 by Hancock and Hinojosa, relating to the Workforce Diploma Pilot Program to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1596 by Zaffarini, relating to the establishment of a Texas Cleaner Landscapes for the Economy, Agriculture, and Nature Advisory Council to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1597 by Hancock, relating to the Office of Vehicle Fleet Management's plan for the state's vehicle fleet to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1598 by Hancock, relating to the composition of the Homeland Security Council to Veteran Affairs. Senate Bill 1599 by Hughes, relating to ballots voted by mail to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1600 by Hughes, relating to a person submitting proof of citizenship to verify eligibility to vote in Texas to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1601 by Hughes, relating to prohibiting municipal libraries that host certain events from receiving state funding to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1602 by Hughes relating to venue and choice of law for certain actions involving censorship by social media platforms to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1603 by Hughes relating to the decision of a court of appeals not to accept certain interlocutory appeals to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1604 by Paxton relating to an exemption from ad valorem taxation of the residence homestead of the surviving spouse of a military service member who is killed or fatally injured in the line of duty to local government. Senate Bill 1605 by Paxton relating to the reduction of the rates of the franchise tax to finance. Senate Bill 1606 by Zaffarini relating to evidence and orders regarding intellectual disability or mental condition in certain guardianship proceedings to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1607 by Colcourse relating to prohibiting the imposition of a monetary fine or penalty for a violation of a money services business terms of service agreement to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1608 by Sparks relating to the election date for the authorization of the issuance of bonds or a tax increase to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1609 by Sparks relating to a proposition to approve the issuance of bonds or other debt to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1610 by Zaffarini relating to prohibiting the use of certain restraints on students enrolled in public schools who receive special education services to education. Senate Bill 1611 by Zaffarini relating to the definitions of abuse and neglect of a child to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1612 by Zaffarini relating to court administration and costs to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1613 by Perry relating to the establishment of the Texas Multimedia Production Program to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1614 by Perry relating to the computation of the cost of goods sold by television and radio broadcasters for purposes of the franchise tax to finance. Senate Bill 1615 by Zaffarini relating to the cosmetology licensure compact to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1616 by Johnson relating to reports by the Legislative Budget Board regarding the General Appropriations Act and other fiscal actions to finance. Senate Bill 1617 by Johnson relating to disclosure under the Public Information Law of settlement communications maintained by or on behalf of the Attorney General as a part of a deceptive trade practices investigation to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1618 by Johnson relating to the regulation of group family leave insurance issued through an employer to pay for certain losses of income to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1619 by Perry relating to the determination of prescription drug reimbursement amounts under the Medicaid vendor drug program to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1620 by Colcourse relating to the prosecution and punishment of certain criminal offenses committed in the course of or for the purpose of unlawfully entering the United States to border security. Senate Bill 1621 by Colcourse relating to requiring state contractors, political subdivisions of this state, and private employers to participate in the federal electronic verification of employment authorization program to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1622 by Colcourse relating to the manufacture or delivery of a controlled substance listed in Penalty Group 1B causing death to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1623 by Eckhart relating to the coverage and provision of abortion and contraception under a health benefit plan to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1624 by Zaffarini relating to guardianships, alternatives to guardianship, and supports and services for incapacitated persons to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1625 by LaMantia, Alvarado, and Zaffarini relating to menstrual disorders, education to education. Senate Bill 1626 by LaMantia relating to an annual occupational medical examination for firefighters to local government. Senate Bill 1627 by Perry relating to the composition and use of money in the Flood Infrastructure Fund to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1628 by Zaffarini relating to the eligibility of certain criminal defendants for an order of non-disclosure of criminal history record information to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1629 by Colcourse relating to the regulation of certain nursing facilities to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1630 by Betancourt relating to an attendance policy adopted by public schools to prevent truancy to education. Senate Bill 1631 by Betancourt relating to certain student records required on a child's enrollment in public school to education. Senate Bill 1632 by Betancourt relating to a review by a local law enforcement agency of a school district's multi-hazard emergency operations plan to education. Senate Bill 1633 by Betancourt relating to the establishment of a school marshal and guardian training grant program to education. Senate Bill 1634 by LaMantia relating to the creation of the second multi-county court at law in Bee, Live Oak, and McMullen counties to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1635 by Betancourt relating to the establishment of a list of approved school safety vendors by the Texas School Safety Center to education. Senate Bill 1636 by Zaffarini relating to the establishment of wild-land urban interface areas and the adoption and enforcement of the Wild-Land Urban Interface Code to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1637 by LaMantia relating to the prohibited report or disclosure by healthcare providers of certain health information to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1638 by Zaffarini relating to the authority of a supporter regarding legal proceedings granted under a supported decision-making agreement to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1639 by Zaffarini relating to prohibitions in connection with event ticket sales to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1640 by Zaffarini relating to conducting certain contested case hearings under the Texas Workers' Compensation System by remote communication to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1641 by Campbell relating to the administration of a grant program for the establishment and expansion of community collaboratives to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1642 by Hall relating to the disposition of certain election records to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1643 by Hall relating to the process of canvassing elections to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1644 by Parker relating to the regulation of state banks to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1645 by Parker relating to the hearings officer of the Texas Department of Banking to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1646 by Parker relating to the regulation of state trust companies to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1647 by Parker relating to the dropout recovery education programs to Education. Senate Bill 1648 by Parker relating to the Centennial Parks Conservation Fund to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1649 by Parker relating to trust to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1650 by Parker relating to durable powers of attorney to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1651 by Parker relating to the issuance of private activity bonds for qualified residential rental projects to local government. Senate Bill 1652 by Huffman et al. Relating to the creation, management, and administration of the Texas Space Commission to Finance. Senate Bill 1653 by Huffman relating to the punishment for the offense of promotion of prostitution to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1654 by Colcourse relating to the diagnosis, maintenance, and repair of electronics-enabled implements in agriculture to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1655 by Hancock relating to the amendment of a certificate of convenience and necessity to provide electricity service to certain water control and improvement districts to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1656 by Schwertner relating to the preservation of Fairfield Lake State Park to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1657 by Schwertner relating to notice required to be given to certain individuals and entities before the Parks and Wildlife Department executes a lease for real property for the development of a state park to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1658 by Hinojosa relating to the collection and disclosure of certain public information to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1659 by Schwertner relating to the sunset review process and certain governmental entities subject to that process to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1660 by Hughes relating to the qualifications necessary for a political party to have the names of its nominees placed on the ballot to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1661 by Hughes relating to the systems used in the Central Counting Station to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1663 by Alvarado relating to the authority of a municipality to alter speed limits to transportation. Senate Bill 1664 by West relating to the establishment of the School Safety Technical Advisory Committee to Education. Senate Bill 1665 by Paxton relating to allowing parents and guardians to elect for a student to repeat or retake a course or grade to education. Senate Bill 1666 by Parker relating to insurers' obligation under a preferred provider benefit plan for continuity of care for certain Medicaid recipients to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1667 by Parker relating to newborn screening to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1668 by Hughes relating to property owners associations to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1669 by LaMantia relating to study on the coverage of certain infants under Medicaid to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1670 by LaMantia relating to required boating incident reports to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1671 by LaMantia relating to the contracting authority of the Parks and Wildlife Department to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1672 by LaMantia relating to the regulation of elevator mechanics to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1673 by LaMantia relating to veterinary services performed on certain animals in the care of a releasing agency to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 1674 by LaMantia relating to the authority for certain state employees to work at places other than the employee's regular or temporarily assigned places of employment to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1675 by Johnson relating to a pilot project to provide medical nutrition assistance to certain Medicaid recipients in this state to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1676 by Zaffarini relating to a bond in an appeal from a hearing for a probable cause in the towing or booting of a motor vehicle to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1677 by Perry relating to the establishment or expansion of behavioral health centers to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1678 by Menendez relating to discounts provided by package store and wine-only package store permit holders to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1679 by Menendez relating to the authorization of distributors to provide malt beverage products to retailers for authorized sampling purposes to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1680 by Menendez relating to the definitions of the criminal offenses of gambling, the prosecution of the criminal offense of gambling, gambling promotion, and keeping a gambling place. to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1681 by Menendez relating to definitions for purposes of gambling criminal offenses to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1682 by Zaffarini relating the defense to prosecution for the offense of cruelty to non-livestock animals under certain circumstances to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1683 by Hughes relating the prohibition on certain discrimination in the extension of credit based on social credit or value-based standards to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1684 by Johnson relating the establishment of the workforce housing program by the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs to local government. Senate Bill 1685 by Blanco and Eckhart relating to eligibility for supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits to Health and Human Services. Sorry.
Last one.
Yay. Senate Bill 1686 by Blanco relating the reduction and plugging of orphaned oil and gas wells to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1687 by Blanco relating to the direct reimbursement of certain employees under the Skills Development Fund to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1688 by Birdwell relating to requirements for a qualified business participating in the Enterprise Zone program during a certain period to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1689 by Birdwell relating to claimant eligibility and initial claims under the unemployment compensation system to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1690 by Hughes relating to prohibiting the conservatorship of a child by a parent who removes the child from this state to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1691 by Hughes relating to requiring operators of smart devices to provide information to users about the collection of personal data to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1692 by Blanco relating to the period of continuous eligibility for the medical assistance program to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1693 by Blanco relating to the creation, distribution, and posting a Veterans Benefits and Services poster in the workplace to Veterans Affairs. Senate Bill 1694 by Blanco relating the reimbursement rate for the provision of vagus nerve stimulation therapy system devices to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1695 by Blanco relating the establishment of the Case Assistance Affiliate Program to provide certain assistance to Medicaid recipients to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1696 by Blanco relating the provision of certain attendant care services under Medicaid to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1697 by Blanco relating to an annual report regarding certain newborn screening tests to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1698 by Colcourse relating to Peace Officers commissioned by the Health and Human Services Commission's Office of Inspector General to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1699 by Johnson relating to the participation of aggregated distributed energy resources in the ERCOT market to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1700 by Blanco relating to the licensing and authority of advanced practice registered nurses to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1701 by Johnson and Eckhart relating to the name and governance of the Railroad Commission of Texas to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1702 by Middleton relating to orders providing for the conservatorship of or possession of and access to a child by the child's parents in a suit affecting the parent-child relationship to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1703 by Middleton relating to the study on the impact of illegal immigration in this state to border security. Senate Bill 1704 by Middleton relating to the state compression percentage and a school district's maximum compressed tax rate under the public school finance system to education. Senate Bill 1705 by Middleton relating to nominations by primary election by all political parties to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1706 by Middleton relating to restrictions on political contributions by out-of-state contributors to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1707 by Middleton relating to reliability backup service for non-dispatchable generation resources in the ERCOT Power region to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1708 by Middleton relating to the elimination of regular mandatory vehicle safety inspections for non-commercial vehicles to transportation. Senate Bill 1709 by King relating to the prosecution of the offenses of sedition and engaging in organized criminal activity to border security. Senate Bill 1710 by Perry relating to Universal Service Fund assistance to high-cost rural areas and the uniform charge that funds the Universal Service Fund to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1711 by Perry relating to the protection of expressive activities at public institutions of higher education to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1712 by Perry relating to the purchase, sale, or lease of real property to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1713 by Perry relating to an allotment for day placement programs under the Foundation School Program to Education. Senate Bill 1714 by Perry relating to the consequences of a criminal conviction on a person's eligibility for an occupational license to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1715 by Perry relating to the establishment of a family health aid program to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1716 by Zaffarini relating to term limits for certain contracts regarding airports and associated air navigation facilities to transportation. Senate Bill 1717 by Zaffarini relating to the prosecution of the offense of stalking to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1718 by Zaffarini relating to the regulation of private passenger vehicle rental companies to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 1719 by Zaffarini, relating to the permitting processes of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to Natural Resources and Economic Development. Senate Bill 1720 by Colcourse, relating to the confidentiality of the identity of a public school employee who reports a potential threat to the school's threat assessment and safe and supportive school team to education. Senate Bill 1721 by Paxton, relating to the display of the national motto and historically significant document to the founding of the United States to education. Senate Bill 1722 by Paxton, relating to instructional facilities funding for certain open enrollment charter schools to education. Senate Bill 1723 by Paxton, relating to the backdating of referrals for certain managed care health benefit plans to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1724 by Springer, relating to advanced directives and healthcare treatment decisions to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1725 by Hughes, relating to the expunction of certain convictions or arrests of a minor for certain alcohol-related offenses to State Affairs. Senate Bill 1726 by Zaffarini, relating to associate judges for guardianship proceedings to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 1727 by Schwertner et al., relating to continuation and functions of the Texas Juvenile Justice Department to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1728 by Hancock, relating to the dedication of surplus money in the Foundation School Fund to reduce school district maintenance and operations ad valorem taxes to education. Senate Bill 1729 by Zaffarini, relating to the provision of solid waste disposal services by certain counties to local government. Senate Bill 1730 by Zaffarini, relating to the processing of United States passport applications by a district court clerk to local government. Senate Bill 1731 by Hughes, relating to human sexuality instruction provided by public schools to education. Senate Bill 1732 by Hancock, relating to standards for certain electric vehicle charging stations to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1733 by Johnson, relating to the establishment of a housing assistance pilot program to assist certain students enrolled in public junior colleges to the Subcommittee on Higher Education. Senate Bill 1734 by Johnson, relating to the use by insurance companies of separate accounts in connection with life insurance and annuities and certain other benefits to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1735 by Johnson, relating to a report by the Legislative Budget Board on the reliance by this state on certain dedicated revenue for purposes of budget certification to finance. Senate Bill 1736 by Hancock and Eckhart, relating to the creation of certain criminal offenses concerning firearm sales at gun shows to state affairs. Senate Bill 1737 by Gutierrez and Eckhart, relating to banning the possession and use of expanding ammo to state affairs. Senate Bill 1738 by Gutierrez, relating to automatic suspension and investigation of law enforcement personnel involved in a shooting with a child to state affairs. Senate Bill 1739 by Gutierrez, relating to the punishment for certain conduct constituting the offense of murder and providing for the prosecution of that conduct as capital murder to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1740 by Gutierrez and Eckhart, relating to gun safety to state affairs. Senate Bill 1741 by Zaffarini, relating to the route designation for the issuance of a permit for the movement of oversized and overweight vehicles in Webb County to transportation. Senate Bill 1742 by Zaffarini, relating to road specifications and safety standards for access to a solid waste facility to natural resources and economic development. Senate Bill 1743 by Hughes, relating to increasing the maximum reference base amount for certain consumer loans to business and commerce. Senate Bill 1744 by Hughes, relating to financial responsibilities and requirements of the community supervision and corrections departments and certain judges to criminal justice. Senate Bill 1745 by Perry, relating to the equalization of the rates of production fees charged on certain wells by the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer Conservation District to water, agriculture, and rural affairs. Senate Bill 1746 by Perry, relating to exemption from the requirement to obtain a permit from a groundwater conservation district for certain temporary water wells to water, agriculture, and rural affairs. Senate Bill 1747 by Perry, relating to the medical use of low THC cannabis by patients with certain medical conditions to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 1748 by Johnson, relating to a franchise tax credit for a taxable entity that employs certain former offenders to finance. Senate Bill 1749 by Hughes, relating to procedures for the issuance of a personal identification certificate to a person 65 years or older to transportation. Senate Bill 1750 by Betancourt, relating to abolishing the county elections administrator position in certain counties to state affairs. SCR 25 by Parker, expressing opposition to the creation of central bank digital currency to business and commerce. SCR 26 by Hughes, urging Congress to amend federal law to allow states to provide for the consolidation of federally funded workforce development services with federally funded social safety net services to natural resources and economic development. SCR 27 by Creighton, urging the United States Congress to take swift action to replace the windfall elimination provision with a more fair and just formula to finance. SCR 28 by Huffman. Urging the Congress of the United States to repeal the government pension offset and windfall elimination provision of the Social Security Act to finance. SCR 29 by Creighton. Urging Congress to repeal invaders at the southern to repel invaders at the southern border to border security. SCR 30 by Creighton. Condemning the Communist Party of China for its transgressions against the United States and the state of Texas to state affairs. SCR 31 by Parker, designating an area in Dallas as Koreatown, Dallas for a 10-year period ending in 2033 to administration. SJR 70 by Hughes, proposing a constitutional amendment protecting the fundamental right of parents to raise their children to state affairs. SJR 71 by Springer, proposing a constitutional amendment requiring the governor to call the legislature into special session following certain disaster or emergency declarations to state affairs. SJR 72 by King, proposing a constitutional amendment protecting private schools from state and local regulation to education. SJR 73 by Paxton, proposing a constitutional amendment authorizing the legislature to provide for an exemption from ad valorem taxation of all or part of the market value of the residence homestead of the surviving spouse of a military service member who is killed or fatally injured in the line of duty to local government. SJR 74 by Parker, proposing a constitutional amendment providing for the creation of the Centennial Parks Conservation Fund to be administered by the Parks and Wildlife Department to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. SJR 76 by Paxton, proposing a constitutional amendment to repeal the constitutional provision that prohibits the appropriation of state money or property for the benefit of any sect, religious society, or theological or religious seminary to finance. SJR 77 by Johnson, proposing a constitutional amendment creating the Workforce Housing Fund to facilitate the development of affordable workforce housing to local government. SJR 78 by Middleton, proposing a constitutional amendment exempting tangible personal property from ad valorem taxation to local government.
Pursuant to a motion previously adopted, the Senate stands adjourned until 3 p.m. Monday, March 20th.